Hi everyone, and welcome to the TLDR series for Linux administration. I have a couple of things that I would like to tell you before you start this series. The first thing is I created this class specifically for Northern Essex so that students could get a basis for what a sysadmin or a systems administrator might end up doing in a job. I created this class because normally when you have sysadmins in industry, a lot of us ended up learning on our own and making a lot of mistakes. And I wanted to have a way of giving everybody a bit of a primer so that if they need to do work on a system, they will be able to start working on that and have a basis so that they don't end up making a lot of the same mistakes that I know I've made and I've had friends in industry make as well. A couple of things that I would like to recommend as you go through this course. I will be including objectives every week. This is an indication of what I think you should be learning that week. I have also written some labs so that you can practice as you are going through this. I'm hopeful that this 15-week course, by the end of it, you will have at least the fundamentals of what a sysadmin might be doing, specifically in a Linux environment, and you will also have the start of a portfolio. I would recommend that as you go through this class, you document everything that you're doing. I will go into more detail during the assignments. Part of the assignments or recommendations that I have is that you document what you're doing as you do it. And I also recommend that you try things. The way this class is going to work is we're going to talk about the theory and then you're going to actually attempt to do some of these things so that you can get hands-on practice. I personally feel that hands-on practice is incredibly important so that you can figure out what actually happens when you are working on things. So you will be working on two servers that you will set up as your first assignment. The first thing that we can talk about is what is a server? So the basic idea behind a server is a computer that is designed to have multiple users instead of a single user, and it is designed so that it can host a lot more information for these multiple users. You'll see these in industry a lot where we'll have server racks because a single computer just doesn't have the hardware and power that we need for a lot of the websites, cloud services, and things like that that are out there now. Now, we end up having servers for different functionalities. We might end up having things like a web server for websites or a DHCP server. Servers actually have this really cool ability to be able to share resources, which is why you'll end up seeing rooms that are racks of servers. Servers are also going to be significantly more powerful. So we're not talking about 2, 3, 4 kernels. We might be talking about 16, 32, 64 plus kernel. I'm sorry, I don't mean kernels, I mean CPUs. And so we might end up talking about 64 plus CPUs. Now, when we're talking about a server, it's different than a regular computer. One of the main differences that you'll see right off the bat is I'm actually having you not enable the GUI. You're going to be doing everything through the command line. So for almost every single lab that I've written for this class, you're going to be running this through the command line. A lot of servers will end up having networking capabilities. You can have a personal computer without networking capabilities, but you wouldn't normally have a server without them. Servers also have to be more reliable and fault tolerant. In industry, we have something called mission critical systems, and these are systems that can never go down. For example, if you work at a bank, they're going to have lots and lots of backup systems to make sure that if you are doing transactions, you don't have to worry about any of the systems going down and money being lost. They are going to have backups and backups of backups, and they are going to have different computers that things could be routed to if needed. Servers are generally going to live in a rack that is a much larger container than we would normally see in our homes. They also have to have more powerful cooling because of the extra power that they have. Now, we might end up having clusters of servers. You can see some images here of that. Data centers are generally clusters, and a lot of the very, very large tech companies will end up having these cluster data centers, such as AWS or Google, just because of the amount of power that they end up needing. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about different kinds of servers, but some of the more popular servers that you're going to see and work with, if they are specialized servers, are going to be email servers, website servers, DNS servers, or DHCP servers. Different types of servers you'll also see in industry are these aren't necessarily single-use servers. These might be multi-use servers. However, if you're going to be going into industry and doing tech support for a company, you might end up having a lot of developers or devs. And developers are going to need multiple servers for their code. They're generally going to have a server that is used for testing of code. They might end up having a staging server. A staging server resembles their production server. The production server is the live server. I give a warning, here be dragons. If anybody ever tells you it's fine to test in production, I am here to tell you no, that's what staging is for. Testing in production never leads to happy things. If it's okay the first time, count yourself very lucky. You might also end up seeing things like database servers or file servers. If any of you are gamers, you might have a game server that you run or you're a part of. If you end up enjoying a lot of movies and music, there are things like Plex, that's a media server, so you can actually have a personal media server at home. There are some popular server operating systems. Now, in this class, you're going to be setting up 2 servers. One of your servers has to be CentOS or CentOS. That's the free version of Red Hat. The other server, you can do either a straight Debian server or Ubuntu server, completely up to you. If you would like to do something other than one of those 2 for your second server, I would like you to make sure you do research, and if you are in my Linux administration class at Northern Essex, please come talk to me first. I picked those 2 because they have the best documentation. Now with servers, we might end up having a single task server or a multitask server. A single task server can do one thing at a time, but it's a little bit harder to do upgrades and scaling for. But it's actually a little bit easier to configure because you only have to worry about one thing, so there isn't going to be as many issues with things like dependencies. Multitask means that the setups and the configs might be more challenging, but we're able to do optimization a little bit better, and scaling is a little bit easier. Scaling is the ability to add on more power as needed. All of the ones we're talking about are going to be multi-user systems for this class. You can have virtual servers or physical servers. Now, this is currently something that it's going to depend on the size of the company, but that might change as the world moves on. Some companies like to have physical servers. They're a little harder to manage remotely, but it means that you can actually have them on site. They can be managed by somebody on site. The cons, of course, being you have to have somebody there to manage them. A virtual server you can manage remotely a little bit easier. It's much easier to spin up a virtual machine or sandbox if you've got a virtual server. They're a lot more portable, easier to scale and do backups on, and they do tend to be more fault tolerant. They are at this particular moment in time, virtualization is incredibly popular to the point where we're actually going to be talking about it later in term and start practicing with Docker and Kubernetes, because a lot of companies have moved to being purely virtual servers. You'll also notice that some companies will end up doing cloud servers. One of the more well-known ones there is AWS, where you can actually basically buy server time if you want to. The assignments that you are going to be doing are going to be done on both of your servers. The learning outcomes for this week is I just want you to be able to name some common servers, talk about why we have different ones, the advantages for Linux, and some of the differences in distros. The first assignment. So the way this entire class is structured is I'm trying to keep it a little bit closer to a brand new job. So congratulations, you've just accepted the post of Systems Administrator for Acme Corporation. We are a Linux-only environment. For the next 3 months, your project is going to be setting up some servers, documenting the servers, and getting them ready to hand off for the new hires. Documentation is going to include accomplishments. We're going to have reviews of your portfolios and accomplishments, and then at the end there's going to be a post-mortem so that we can look back at the project and see how it works. The first assignment that you're going to do is you need to set up 2 servers. I recommend using a virtual machine. It is absolutely possible for you to set up a server on, say, a Raspberry Pi, but for some of the things that we're going to be doing, that might be a little bit more challenging. If you don't want the extra challenge, I recommend using a virtual machine. If you are a Northern Essex student, you have access to VMware. If you are not or would prefer to use VirtualBox, please feel free. You're going to need 2 systems. I want one of them to be CentOS, and for the second one, you can choose Ubuntu Server or Debian is my strong recommendation. Do not use the GUI or the minimal install when you are doing this. Make sure that you turn on the internet, and I also recommend including a way to share files such as Smarty. As you are doing this, you want to make sure that you create a document showing how you did the installs. The target market for this document is somebody trying to follow along with you to make their own machines. I want you to assume some technical knowledge but not expertise, and I recommend screenshots to go with this. You should start your document of the server, which is going to include what you have in your install, any software you've added, and any configurations that you've changed. If you have any questions, please let me know.